had just finished washing the dishes when Noah walked in with that half-grin of his, the kind that always meant trouble when he was 12, and still somehow managed to unsteady me now, even though he was 27 and more of a man than a boy. "Don't plan anything next week," he said, tossing a rolled-up piece of paper onto the kitchen table with a thud that made the salt shaker jump. "We're leaving Monday morning." I blinked at him, still holding a damp plate in my hands. "Leaving? For Spain," he said, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. "Just you and me. 1 week. 1 camper trailer. 7 cities. 0 work, 0 stress, and definitely 0 excuses." I laughed, short and unsure. "Spain?" He nodded, tugging the paper open. It was a route map, hand-marked in red ink like a trail of breadcrumbs. Madrid, Toledo, Córdoba, Granada, Malaga, Wanda. My heart gave a soft kick. "Since when do you plan things like this?" He leaned against the counter. "Since I noticed you haven't smiled properly in months." That shut me up. It wasn't an accusation. He wasn't wrong, and we both knew it. Retirement had been quieter than I expected. Quieter than I liked. The house, once filled with music, schedules, his teenage drama, my single mother chaos, it had become too still. Noah had moved out 5 years ago, but now he was back. Temporarily, he said. Just while he figured some things out. Transition. Reset. That's what we called it. I watched him now. Taller, broader, but still the same sharp eyes that had stared up at me from a car seat the first time I drove him home after the adoption. He was 3. I was 30. I hadn't had a clue what I was doing. But I knew even then that he was mine. "You're serious about this?" I asked, drying my hands. "Already booked the trailer," he said, grinning. "Fully stocked. Leaps too. It's got solar panels and a little gas stove. We'll be mostly off-grid." I raised an eyebrow. "And what if I said no?" He shrugged. "Then I'll eat the deposit and tell the trailer company my mom has no sense of adventure." I sighed, letting myself smile just a little. I haven't driven a stick shift in years. He held up 2 fingers. "Good thing I have." By the time Monday rolled around, I was sitting in the passenger seat of a creamy white trailer, engine humming beneath us as we pulled out of the airport lot near Madrid. The city stretched wide and golden in the late morning light. Rooftops gleamed like bronze coins, and the sky above was so blue it hurt the eyes. Inside the cabin, everything smelled new. Vinyl and cotton. Fresh coffee in a thermos he'd prepared. My cardigan still carried the scent of the lavender drawer sheets he always teased me about. Noah had his window cracked, letting the wind ruffle his dark curls as he fiddled with the stereo, landing on a playlist that pulsed softly beneath the engine's rumble. He looked relaxed. Happier than I'd seen him in months. "How long since you've done something like this?" he asked, glancing over. "Thought about it. 20 years maybe. We went camping once, remember? That summer you broke your arm falling off a picnic table." He grinned. "Best scar of my life. Worst insurance claim of mine." We both laughed, and the tension I hadn't realized I was holding started to uncoil. There was something deeply familiar about being in a moving vehicle with him. It echoed all those road trips from when he was younger. The way he used to narrate everything he saw outside the window, the way he'd fall asleep mid-sentence with his head tilted toward the glass. I glanced at him now, noticing how the sun caught the lines along his jaw, the tiny creases near his eyes when he smiled. He was quiet for a while, watching the road, one hand draped casually over the wheel. "You ever regret not traveling more?" he asked suddenly. It was a soft question, not pointed. But still, it nudged at something tender. "Sometimes," I admitted. "But I always told myself I'd wait until I had time." "And now you do," he said, eyes still on the road. "So, let's not waste it." That night we parked the trailer just outside Toledo. The sun was dipping behind the horizon, casting the landscape in rich amber. Our campsite was tucked near a grove of olive trees, the air warm and laced with a faint scent of earth and citrus. We cooked pasta on the tiny stove, both of us laughing as we took turns bumping into each other in the narrow galley kitchen. Afterward, we stepped outside with glasses of wine and sat on collapsible chairs, the trailer behind us like a quiet sentinel. "You know," I said, watching the last light fade, "this was a good idea." Noah didn't say anything for a moment. He just looked at me. Really looked. "I just wanted us to have something," he said quietly. "Before life gets busy again. Before we forget how to be in the same space." My chest tightened. "You think we're forgetting?" Yes. He hesitated, then shook his head. "No. I think we're remembering." A breeze stirred the leaves. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked. The stars began to creep out, slow and deliberate. I reached over, touching his arm gently. "You've always been good at knowing what I need before I do." He turned to me, eyes unreadable. "Maybe because I've always needed it too." Something flickered in the space between us. Something tender, unspoken. Not wrong. Just complicated. And somehow, the silence felt more intimate than words ever could. The third day on the road brought us into Granada, where the air itself felt older, thicker with stories. Whitewashed houses clung to the hillsides like teeth, and narrow stone streets twisted upward into neighborhoods where time moved differently. It was late afternoon when we parked the trailer on the edge of a campsite shaded by orange trees. The sweet smell of blossoms drifted in through the open windows as we unpacked our bags. We'd already fallen into a rhythm. He handled the driving, I handled the cooking. He chose the music, I navigated. But as soon as we stepped into the heart of the city that evening, the rhythm shifted. We climbed the narrow alleys of the Albayazin until the view of the Alhambra unfolded before us, glowing amber against the indigo sky. Flamenco music drifted out of a doorway somewhere below, mixed with the scent of grilled lamb and spice. Noah had his camera slung over one shoulder, but instead of pointing it at the view like every other tourist, he turned it toward me again. "Look this way," he murmured. I laughed softly, tucking my hair behind my ear. "You're wasting your film." "It's digital," he said, and lowered his voice. "And I'm not wasting anything." I felt his gaze more than I saw it, a weight, a warmth like sunlight filtered through glass. I looked away first, at the fortress bathed in gold, and felt a flutter in my chest that had nothing to do with the climb. We stayed on that overlook until the sky turned black and the city below became a constellation of lights. People around us took photos, moved on, but Noah and I lingered. The wind tugged at the hem of my dress. His shoulder brushed mine, and he didn't move away. "Remember when you used to carry me on your back?" he said suddenly, his voice quiet. I laughed. "You were the heaviest 3-year-old in Spain." "I wasn't," he murmured. "But you still did it." The memory hit me so clearly. His small arms locked around my neck, his breath warm against my ear, the feeling of wanting to keep him safe from a world that had already been unkind to him. Even now, that instinct stirred inside me. But it wasn't the same. He wasn't the same. Neither was I. We walked back to the trailer under a moon so bright it painted silver edges on everything. Inside, space felt tighter than it had the nights before. He dropped onto the bench seat, camera still in his hands, scrolling through the photos he'd taken. Without looking up, he said, "You've got this look in some of these shots. Like you're finally awake again." I sat across from him. "What does that even mean?" He lifted his head. His eyes caught mine, and for a heartbeat it felt like there was no air between us. "It means," he said slowly, "that you're not just my mom. You're a person. And you don't even see it." The trailer hummed softly with the night wind pressing against its sides. My heart knocked hard against my ribs, and I swallowed, unsure of what to do with his words. Outside, a guitar played somewhere, faint and lonely. I tried to deflect with humor. "Are you practicing to be a poet now?" He smiled faintly but didn't look away. "Maybe." I reached for the bottle of wine we'd bought in Toledo, poured 2 glasses, and handed him one. "To our trip," I said, clinking his glass lightly. He held my gaze as our glasses touched. To us. We drank in silence, the trailer rocking slightly in the breeze. When I set my glass down, my fingers brushed his. Neither of us moved for a moment. And there it was again, that strange suspended space between us. Not wrong. Not right. Just charged, like a wire humming quietly in the dark. Outside, the city kept singing. Inside, everything felt still and endless. The rain came suddenly, not as a drizzle or a warning mist, but as a downpour, sharp, insistent and wild. We had just pulled into the campsite outside Malaga, the trailer settling beneath a canopy of eucalyptus trees. The air had smelled strange all day, like static and seaweed. Now, as dusk fell and the wind rattled the windows, that smell became electric. The sky cracked wide open above us, thunder chasing lightning like it was desperate to catch up. Inside, the trailer felt smaller than ever. Noah was barefoot, pacing the narrow space between the kitchenette and the table bench, his shirt clinging to his back after the mad dash from the showers. I sat at the edge of the bed, towel drying my hair, trying not to watch him too obviously. But I did. How could I not? The tension that had crept into our space back in Granada had followed us. It hadn't faded in the sun or washed out with the wine. It had grown legs, roots, teeth. He turned suddenly. Power's out in the whole park. They said it might not be back until morning. I nodded, folding the towel into my lap. Looks like it's just us then. He smiled faintly, but something flickered behind his eyes. He reached into a drawer and pulled out a small battery lantern. Its glow was soft and amber, throwing long shadows across the walls, across his face. "This okay?" he asked. "Perfect," I said, even though nothing felt okay at all. The storm raged louder. Rain pummeled the trailer roof in waves. Thunder rolled over the hills like giants shifting in their sleep. He sat across from me, his legs stretched out, ankles bare. "You ever scared of storms?" "No," I said honestly. "I used to be. But you got used to them, raising a kid on your own." His voice was quiet. "Do you ever wish it had gone differently?" I looked at him. Differently how? That someone else had been there. Partner. Father for me. Someone to hold you at night. The question came out of nowhere, or maybe it didn't. I looked down at my hands. Sometimes. But then I think, maybe I got what I needed. The silence after that was longer than the thunder. His voice came low. "And what about now? Do you still need someone?" I met his eyes. There was no smirk on his face, no trace of teasing, just sincerity. And something else, something that made my breath catch. "Noah," I said, but the name itself came out quieter than I intended. More vulnerable. He began, then stopped, running a hand through his hair. "I know I shouldn't say this. Not here. Not like this. But these days, being around you like this." The storm boomed so loud it shook the cabinets. "Makes me forget we're supposed to be just one thing." I didn't know what to say. He wasn't a boy anymore. And I wasn't just the woman who used to pack his lunches and sign his school forms. In that moment, we weren't in Spain. We weren't in a trailer. We were suspended in a world that felt like it could vanish if either of us breathed too hard. My voice was barely audible. "You think it's just the trip? The wine? The storm?" His gaze held mine. "I think it's something I've felt for longer than I should have." A gust of wind rattled the door. The light flickered. Still neither of us moved. "I don't want to hurt what we have," I whispered. "It's too important." "I know," he said. "That's why I haven't said anything until now." He stood slowly, walking to the tiny counter and pretending to check the stove. But there was no flame, no food. Just space. And silence. And a storm outside that sounded nothing like the one inside me. I kept my eyes on my lap, afraid that if I looked at him again, I'd see something I wasn't ready to name. But then I felt the trailer shift slightly under his steps. He was coming back. He didn't say anything, just walked over, knelt beside me at the edge of the bed, and gently, almost cautiously, placed his hands on my shoulders. Then higher, into my hair. His fingers moved softly at first, unsure, like he was afraid I'd pull away. But I couldn't. He began to massage my scalp in slow, circular motions, his thumbs sweeping behind my ears, his fingers threading through strands like he was memorizing every line, every root. Closed my eyes. Not because I was tired, not because I was relaxed, but because I didn't know what to do with the feeling unfurling inside me. This wasn't the kind of touch that asked for anything. It wasn't clinical. It wasn't accidental. It was quiet, intentional, familiar and unfamiliar at the same time. He said nothing. Neither did I. The trailer creaked in the wind. Rain painted patterns on the windows. Thunder rolled softly now, like it had worn itself out. His hands slowed, then stilled. And for a few long moments he just kept them there, holding me. Not in the way a child needs comfort, but in the way a person reaches for something they've wanted to be close to for a very long time. When I finally opened my eyes, the lantern's glow cast him in gold. His face was inches from mine, gaze unreadable. Not pleading, not pushing, just waiting to see if I would move closer, or further away. I didn't do either. I just sat there, heart loud in my chest, unsure of where this night would leave us, or if we'd ever be the same when the morning came. By the time we reached Cadiz, the storm was behind us. The road had dried, the skies cleared, and the sea stretched out in all directions, blue, endless, humming softly like it had nothing to hide. We parked the trailer along the edge of a cliff just south of the city, where the waves below crashed into dark rocks with quiet rhythm. There was a path down to the beach, half swallowed by reeds and wild rosemary. Noah had found it on some travel blog, calling it untouched with that spark in his eyes. I figured we could use a place where no one would find us, he'd said. I didn't ask why. That morning, neither of us spoke about the storm, or the way he had knelt beside me, or the feeling that still lingered in the air like the scent of last night's rain. We made coffee. We packed a small bag. And we walked down the winding trail to the beach. It was nearly empty, save for a pair of gulls circling overhead and the wind drawing lines in the sand. I spread a towel on the ground while he pulled off his shirt and ran barefoot toward the waves. The sun hit his back, painting his skin gold. He dove into the surf without hesitation. And for a moment, he looked like that boy again, the one I used to watch from the shoreline, yelling reminders about sunscreen, always ready with a dry towel and juice boxes. But the man who rose from the water was someone else entirely. He came back slowly, droplets sliding down his chest, hair pushed back, grin soft and lopsided. I offered him a towel. He didn't take it. Instead, he sat beside me, close enough that our arms brushed. The heat of his skin against mine was faint, but unmistakable. We watched the waves in silence for a while. Do you ever wonder if some lines are only there because we're afraid to cross them? I turned my head toward him, heart suddenly louder than the sea. What do you mean? He didn't look at me. I mean, what if love doesn't always fit into the boxes we build for it? What if some kinds of closeness aren't wrong? Just misunderstood. I swallowed. The words hung there, warm and weightless and terrifying. You think that's what this is? Yes. Misunderstood. He finally looked at me. I think it's the most honest thing I've felt in a long time. The world around us faded, the crashing surf, the salt in the air, the distance we'd driven just to get here. You're my son, I said quietly, unsure if I was reminding him or myself. You made me your son, he replied just as gently. And I'll never stop being grateful for that. But I'm not a child anymore. And neither are you. Was. The kind that only exists between two people who know each other too well. I felt his hand brush mine, tentatively. Not claiming. Just asking. And the scariest part, I didn't pull away. Couldn't. Because something in me, something buried for years beneath motherhood, duty and silence, was answering him in ways I didn't yet have words for. The breeze caught my hair and pulled it across my face. He reached up, slow and careful, and tucked it behind my ear. His fingers didn't leave my cheek. And still, I didn't move. Not forward, not back. We just sat there, in the stillness after the storm, with the world suspended around us. And knew, without needing to say it, that nothing would be the same again. We didn't rush back to the trailer. The walk up from the beach was slow, the air heavy with salt and something else I couldn't name. The sky was sliding into gold again, the kind of light that makes everything look softer, almost like memory. Inside the trailer, it was quiet except for the faint hiss of the gas stove where we'd left water warming for tea. The space smelled like sun and sea now, our damp towels draped over the chairs, sand clinging to the floor. Noah ducked inside after me, hair still wet from the surf, shirt hanging loose over his shoulders. The narrowness of the doorway made him brush past me as he entered. I felt the heat of him at my back, the brush of his arm, and the trailer seemed to shrink even smaller. "I'll make the tea," I said, my voice a little too quick. "I've got it," he said, reaching past me for the kettle at the same time I did. Our hands collided. We both laughed softly, reflexively, but neither of us moved our hand away. His fingers curled instinctively, warm against mine. I felt a tremor run up my arm. "I'm sorry," he murmured. "Me too," I whispered, though I wasn't sure what I was apologizing for. He looked at me then, really looked, and in that tight little kitchen it felt like the whole world had narrowed to the space between our faces. And then it happened. Not a plan. Not a choice. Just a slip, a tilt of heads in opposite directions at the same time. His breath brushing my cheek as he reached for the kettle, my eyes flicking up at the wrong moment. Our lips met. It was soft, brief, an exhale rather than a claim, but it landed like thunder all the same. We both froze. He pulled back a fraction of an inch, eyes wide, searching my face as if to ask whether it had really happened. My heart was hammering so loud I thought he could hear it. He started. "I know," I said quickly, stepping back until the counter pressed into my spine. "It was an accident," he said at the same time. We stared at each other. The kettle hissed, boiling over. I reached to turn it off with hands that weren't steady. Outside, gulls cried over the sea, oblivious. Inside, the silence stretched taut between us, charged and alive. Neither of us moved for a long time. And in that moment, I realized that whatever we were telling ourselves, accident, slip, mistake, we had already crossed into a place where words might never be enough.